9. Awkward Surprises. May 9th, 1986. I came prepared. Mary Lou grinned exuberantly. Her hands were full of packs of hot dogs, smoked sausages, buns, and giant marshmallows, accompanied by a box of graham crackers. A stack of chocolates balanced beneath her chin. The entire precarious arrangement wobbled as she walked. We can have a feast tonight before we head out in the morning, she announced, her eyes sparkling with good cheer. Here, let me help with some of that before you drop it all. Diane reached out just as the teen started losing hold of half of what she carried. I wouldn't mind some s'mores. Something sweet would be great. Diane smiled too. Her teeth flashed white in the firelight that flickered against the backdrop of the darkening campground, with a subdued appearance of the sun that was fading in the distance. Light layers of ash high in the atmosphere gave everything a red glow. Ah, thanks, Diane. Whew, I was afraid it would all fall, Mary Lou told her with relief. What's got you in such a good mood all of a sudden? Kenneth asked. He glanced sourly toward the volcano. I thought about what Pele and Diane said yesterday, so I'm going to try to be the positive person. We are going to see this problem through, so we just have to find the answer since there is one, Mary Lou told him. Here, have some food and a roasting fork. The girl tossed him and Brian both a pack of hot dogs each and shared out the tools. She then sat down on the other side of the fire beside Diane. So, that's what you had in that big cooler of yours. Those forks will hold more food than the skewers. Thank you, Brian said to Mary Lou. He turned the fork over in his hands, examining it before he pulled the tines to full length and speared 2 hot dogs. He scooted close to the fire and got them close enough to the flame that they immediately started searing. Diane's ones were nearly done, so she moved to give Brian room. Yeah, well, it's not camping without dogs and s'mores, Mary Lou said agreeably. Since this is our last night, I figured, why not splurge a little and have a marshmallow roast? Oops, I forgot plates. Does anybody need one? I have some in my tent. That sounds good, Diane said around a mouthful of food. I need a place to set these down. They're hot. Ow, ow! She fanned her mouth awkwardly and blew air through pursed lips. Okay, give me a sec. She got up smoothly from a cross-legged position and walked off. Brian opened up his own thermal box and rattled around in the ice. Ah, something cold and wet. That's the ticket. Ken, you want a wine cooler? You look like you need to unwind a little. Yeah, sure. I'll take one, Kenneth told him and took the offered bottle that Brian opened for him. Diane, you? He also offered her one. Nah, I'm good. You two go ahead. I got my Pepsi, she answered. So, what are you thinking, bro? You've been mostly quiet since yesterday afternoon. Brian sipped his brew and looked intently at Kenneth. When you're this quiet, you always have something up your sleeve. Just then, Mary Lou returned with a stack of plates and handed Diane one. The rest Mary Lou laid down. She prepped her food, then settled in and listened quietly. I'm thinking we've gone about this whole thing all wrong, Kenneth told Brian loud enough for Diane and Mary Lou to hear. He motioned with his bottle toward the mountains. This was never going to work, and we should have seen it in the first place. I'm mad, I guess, that I let us come this far for nothing. We're going to have to think through our steps better than this. Kenneth shook his head and continued. Ulfar's spear's no joke. From what we have seen, it has the abilities and attack powers of a demonic creature all on its own. I also think that the other things that have happened along the way are not accidental. Can I prove it? Well, no. But the attack on Mary Lou at the rest stop was something different. That was more than physical. According to what Diane and Mary Lou saw, It was a creature that fits the classic description of a demon. That's a spiritual issue beyond the artifact itself. Kenneth looked straight at Diane and back at Brian. I see what you're saying, Diane said. It was a spirit, a nasty one. It concerns me that the demon was fully and physically present. That takes something not only strong-willed, but powerful to boot. For the most part, according to John here, spirits aren't allowed to be seen by human eyes, and they ain't supposed to interfere with us. I get that, Kenneth acknowledged. If it were a hard and fast rule, they break it often enough. My point, though, is that we've approached this purely physically, but the spear's spiritual aspect is untouched this whole time. We need a way, just like when we fought Ulfa and kicked his ass, to deal with both the physical and spiritual. Kenneth paused to sip his drink and continued. I don't know where the demons are in this for sure, but I'd bet you it has something to do with Loki. This thing belongs to him, right? Good point. I suppose you could say that technically the spear is his property. Diane agreed. But no way am I gonna let him have it, she declared. It already cost us one friend, and probably two, 'cause I think Rachel has just lost it. She's so paranoid she's jumping at every shadow. Yeah, Rachel doesn't need to be around the spear at all. Brian shook his head with a worried expression. She's even starting to accuse everybody of stuff that never happened, including stuff they never said. I don't think Rach can tell anymore what's real and what's not. And, Kenneth added, I know it affected Mary Lou when she was wounded. We can't afford any more accidents here. So far, those of us that are here have been strong enough to resist the worst of its effects. But from here out, one of us has to stand guard on it at all times with the necessary backup. There's something else. I hear a but coming, Brian said. Actually, there is a but, or a what if, Kenneth replied. What if the demon who attacked Mary Lou were to be influenced by, or even worse, get its paws on the spear? Was that what it was trying to do? Kenneth bared his teeth and hissed through his clenched jaw at the thought. Like, maybe distract everybody and, while they were tending me, it snatched the spear? Mary Lou sat up straight with her eyes wide. It also could have been a random attack of opportunity, Diane pointed out. We can't assume nothing. Still, I agree we better watch our backside a lot better, 'cause if your guess and mine are correct, we'll see more trouble. I told you yesterday we gotta be running with our eyes wide open. Well, we do. We don't give up, and we don't get mad. Get glad? Mary Lou quipped. No, we get vigilant and don't get surprised again, smart-ass, Kenneth said, raising an eyebrow at her. Puns and commercials aside, remember we are dealing with something sentient, magical, and spiritual with inherent power of its own, if we are listening to Pele. I believe Diane is understating the situation. We aren't just going to have trouble. No, we're going to have to fight, maybe to the death, before we're really done. And by now, we aren't strangers to that. I hope what you just said is not a prophetic statement. Brian gulped his beer to try and drown out his friend's comment. Mary Lou looked around at the grim faces of her companions as what Kenneth said slowly sunk in. Bone-chilling quiet seemed to drop around them like a curtain, walling them off from the rest of the world. Goosebumps tingled up her arms to her neck. She tried to shake the feeling. Well, we can't do anything else for now. How about some chocolate and marshmallows? Mary Lou grabbed one of the 2 bags of marshmallows and tried to pull it open. It resisted. then gave way with an explosive pop that sent marshmallows not only into her lap, but flying everywhere. Ugh, oops. Mary Lou half smiled, half gritted her teeth. She picked up as many stray marshmallows as she could save. That wasn't supposed to happen. You could have asked for a knife. Here, give me that. Kenneth got up and snatched the unopened bag and handed it to Brian. Let the experts handle it. Brian grinned at her when she huffed at the two of them. What? I like mine without dirt on them. He pulled out a knife and neatly sliced the second bag open without dropping any. He carefully pulled out a supply of the bag's contents and handed it back to Kenneth. Well, so do I, Mary Lou admitted. Don't mind me, Diane told them. I got plenty right here on this plate. She proceeded to stuff as many white, puffy balls on her fork as she could fit and held them close to the fire. A little dirt never hurt nobody. It's all good. She winked at the girl sitting next to her. When her marshmallows were close to black, Diane grabbed a chocolate bar and a package of grams. Mary Lou followed suit, quickly blowing out the flame on the end of her fork and making a gooey mess that she popped into her mouth. That's perfect. I'm glad I thought of it, Mary Lou said with half-closed eyes. She reached for more and happily made a second batch. She licked the sticky coating off her fingers. It was a good idea, Brian agreed. As long as you don't dump them all on the ground. Hey! He said as a marshmallow flew through the air at him. In response, he threw one back. Soon, white puffy balls were flying back and forth across the campfire as they let off steam. Having fun lightened their mood and let them briefly forget the threat hanging over them. Their coyote companion chased down stray treats and happily snatched them up. Good boy, Diane told him, laughing. We have a cleanup crew. She deliberately tossed the coyote a marshmallow, which he snapped out of the air and swallowed in one gulp. Great catch, Mary Lou told him. He yipped enthusiastically, and she too threw one at him, which he also neatly caught. As the evening wore on, the close-knit group filled up on treats and talked late into the night. Mary Lou was the first to give up and go to her tent to bed. Sleepily, the girl took off her shoes in the light of her flashlight, fluffed her pillow, and tried to settle where a stone wasn't digging into her hip. Mary Lou drifted off to sleep, listening to her friends still muttering by their campfire. The quiet peace she felt earlier seeped in and helped her to a solid, dreamless sleep. Eventually, the others also went to their respective shelters to rest for the night. Kenneth and the coyote were still awake, guarding the campsites, when the screaming started. What the heck? Kenneth jumped up. The coyote ran to Mary Lou's tent with the young man right behind him. He looked around at Kenneth with a questioning expression in the dim light. What now? Yep, came the reply from the puzzled coyote. He sniffed the zipped tent fly and sat down. The coyote's ears pricked to attention as he listened to the squealing, bumping, and rustling from inside the tent. A flashlight came on and illuminated the inside of the tent. The fabric walls shook. Concerned for his human packmate, he sniffed around the exterior walls of the tent but didn't smell anything amiss. He went back to Kenneth, who stood outside her tent, making human noises at the girl through the fabric. Not sure what was wrong, he sat half-crouched with his hackles up. The wild canine prepared to attack whatever was threatening her. The coyote watched Kenneth kneel in front of her tent, unzip the door, and address the tent's hapless occupant. Nearby, he saw that the other tents also had lights on. People were opening their tents to poke their heads out in sleepy puzzlement. The coyote didn't leave Kenneth's side, however. Instead, he shoved his canine head in beside Kenneth so he could see and sniff inside. What on earth is wrong with you? Kenneth demanded of Mary Lou. Oh, my God! There's a squishy thing, she answered, frantically rustling through and lifting her blankets. A what? Kenneth's voice went a tone higher. He wasn't sure he heard her correctly. A squishy thing, she said louder. I don't know what you're talking about. Just stop. I said stop, Kenneth told her, putting a hand out to halt her frantic pawing of the blankets. You obviously aren't dying, so calm down and explain. Mary Lou sucked in her breath and let it out. Okay. I was sound asleep. I rolled over and put my hand down in the dark, where I couldn't see. I felt something, and it woke me up. It was squishy, like a big fat hornworm or a snake or something. It moved under my hand, she said. I don't want it crawling on me in the middle of the night. Only I can't find anything. Are you serious? He glared at her. You woke up the whole campground for that? She stared at him. He didn't sound sympathetic at all. Did I? The teen leaned over and looked out the door of her blue fabric dome tent. She had to squeeze past the coyote to do so. Sorry. Mary Lou withdrew and picked her pillow up to look under it, too. Where is it? I swear to you, there's a squishy thing in here. I have no idea. He looked at the coyote and shrugged his shoulders. I think she just lost her marbles. Kenneth addressed him, pointing his thumb back inside the tent. The coyote started to push his way inside. Kenneth halted him with one hand and gently pushed him back. The wild canine sat back on his tail and moved to the side. Hold back up, sir. Your hairy head is in the way, Kenneth told him firmly. I can't see through you. First of all, shine your light, Kenneth addressed Mary Lou. The coyote watched the light flash around the tent some more, but at least Kenneth was calming the girl. His hackles settled. I don't see anything, Mary Lou said. Probably because there's nothing here, he declared. You were asleep. You probably dreamed it. Go back to sleep. Not till I figure out what that was. Mary Lou resumed pawing through her blankets. Fine. Get out, Kenneth said in a deliberate low tone. The coyote watched Kenneth offer his hand. The coyote nosed the girl with interest as the boy helped Mary Lou up, out, and to her feet. He wagged his tail like a dog. She didn't smell injured. Footsteps approached from behind. Recognizing Diane's smell, the coyote didn't look around. Is everything okay? Diane asked slowly. Her words slurred a little bit as she rubbed her eyes and firmly pulled a pink throw blanket around her shoulders. Yeah, you can go back to bed. I got this, Kenneth told her above the furry gray head that attempted to push forward again. Sniffing further, the coyote recognized another faint aroma. He licked his chops with a sudden gleam in his eye. What's wrong? She thinks something got in her tent, Kenneth replied, translating the girl's confused frustration into more understandable meaning. We're gonna pull the blankets and shake 'em out. Whatever it is, you'll find it that way, Diane said quietly, and nodded. She retreated to her tent. The coyote could hear her talking to Brian in low tones. He laughed, then zipped his tent. With the coyote stuck by his side like a burr, Kenneth pulled each blanket, pillow, pillowcase, and piece of clothing out of the tent. He shook them out while Mary Lou held the flashlight with chagrin when nothing out of the ordinary appeared. Finally, the open tent door allowed the coyote to enter and nose under the last blanket. Sniffing enthusiastically, while the humans were outside shaking another item of clothing, he found what he was looking for, nestled deep in a fold, unnoticed. He snatched up his prey. Gingerly holding it in his mouth, he slunk out of the tent with his head down. Kenneth watched his coyote friend walk over to his shelter, barely illuminated by a small lantern. There he laid down, made some chewing noises, and swallowed. With his head on his paws, the coyote sighed and watched the rest of the proceedings with his eyes. The teen had a sudden suspicion as to what the coyote had just found in the tent and thought he knew the source of the commotion. Kenneth eyed him sardonically. Uh-huh. I didn't see a thing. He laughed a little. I didn't see anything either, Mary Lou said, oblivious. She quietly glared at her tent. I think your squishy thing is gone. I believe you can go back to bed, Kenneth told her as he held up the last blanket. You have to put everything back. Here you go. I'm done. He grinned unrepentantly and handed her the pile of cloth they had just dragged out of her tent. But what the heck? She wrinkled her brow in confusion. Shrugging her shoulders, she set to putting it all back in order so she could sleep during what little was left of the night. I swear there was something in here, she muttered softly to herself. Whatever it was, she assured herself, it had to have been scared away after all that. The coyote and Kenneth sat companionably side by side, watching the girl get resettled. When all was quiet again, Kenneth stroked his soft ruff. I could have told her, but why? The teen whispered to him. Kenneth reached into his pocket and pulled out a marshmallow. Here, you want another one? The coyote accepted it gently and thumped his tail, chewing carefully till the sticky sweet puff melted across his tongue. Don't expect more, Kenneth chuckled to himself. That is the last one. May 10th. Beyond the veil. Ichor still oozed from the gaping wound that had been Ictathyr's shoulder, though it had lessened. Black droplets rained down as he fled. The scent of his blood attracted small imps who were practically only smiley faces with fangs to dart around him and gleefully lap up his essence. The daemon snarled and snapped at the flying nuisances. Tiny serpentine shadows with only enough mind to know fear and hunger crept ever closer. They waited for him to weaken enough that they could feast. Hatred curled in Ictathyr's mind, in Ictathyr's ruined chest at those who had eluded him. His limbs trembled with fear and anticipation as he contemplated the hunt ahead of him. The lightworkers were dangerous prey, and might be his end. But far greater terror of the fallen angel, his enforcer, and Loki held him to his course. The Dramorzin bared his teeth at the images in his head. He knew his job. He had torn and clawed his way to his high position among his brethren, only to be reduced to an errand dog. His particular talents as a spirit of sadism were wasted on this endeavor. However, greed pushed Ictathyr where the threat of harm failed. There were too many opportunities in the mortal realm for him to stray from his purpose. Lad will be plentiful and beautiful with the spear in hand. He practically sobbed at the thought. Tremors racked Ictathyr's frame as he stumbled and almost fell. Shrieks and cries sounded along his back trail as those who hunted him sensed vulnerability. Ictathyr drew on his rage at being thwarted. It drove him, wounded as he was, to keep his feet. He hadn't the days and weeks it would usually take to fully heal and regenerate if he were to catch his prey. It would be now, or else risk the Urgermach or a Gibril coming for him for his failure. No, he told himself. Feed and grow strong, then kill. He would start with the girl with the blazing light, then go for the shaman and kill her. And when she was a sticky spot on the ground, he would. Ictathyr stumbled again shakily and lost his train of thought. The daemon, unsure if he could tear a hole in the veil in his present state, gave up on the idea of jumping. He quested for an established path to a stable gate into the mortal realm. Finally, in the confusion of the mists where lost souls wander, he found what he was searching for. Turning aside onto the curving path, the daemon ran with renewed vigor, hoping to slip past the guardians of the ether without being noticed. The risk of being caught by one of them was typically too great because it would mean instant and permanent death if seen. Out of options, Ictathyr took the direct route and exited into the mortal world. Ictathier crept deadly silent from shadow to shadow. He quested for the spiritual presence of emotional misery that would enable his unique attack style. He shrank away from those whose psychic scent burned with light. The daemon had no wish to bite into a soul with the mark of spiritual protection upon them. He also ignored the lesser beings as beneath notice. Instead, he hunted that which would give his darkness strength. Someone like him, without faith and too weak to fight or even recognize his presence. An exceptionally dark place behind a thick tangle of brambles beneath a fir tree provided a place to wait and watch. The daemon grew still. This position was a good vantage point beside a lightly graveled path. No one noticed the inky black presence or faintly glowing eyes as they passed by. Ictathier watched patiently. Some potential targets strolled in pairs, some jogged alone, and an occasional human passed by with a leashed dog. For the humans, the only indication anything was amiss in the park was the cold area along the out of the way section of walkway. Some passers-by shivered and scurried off. A young girl of about 15 who pushed a bicycle sensed something more. She stopped and tried to peer into the bushes, wondering why she felt a sudden creeping fear. She rubbed her goosebumps, shook her head, and walked off muttering to herself. All of these people the daemon left alone. He waited for something specific. The sun needed to travel further away so that the absence of light could provide better cover for his purpose. It grew colder and began to get late when Ictathier's patience bore fruit. Past a neatly mowed field beyond the path that he stalked, and beyond the families relaxing at picnic tables or throwing a ball, a new arrival set off the daemon's alarm bells. Anticipation tingled along his spine. He licked his fangs in glee. There, hunt, kill, he thought. The dark spirit flowed from shadow to shadow. He hid, yet moved steadily closer to his goal. The human appeared to be alone. The pristine white, red, and blue pizza delivery sign contrasted with the rusty top of Vincent Kovich's '72 Ford Pinto wagon. Sometime in the past, the car had been blue. However, rust showed through in mottled patches. It had a rattle, and the seats held together with duct tape and hope. The car's occupant opened its squeaky door, got out, and slammed it. "Piece of shit," he snarled at it. "Soon's I can afford it, I'm getting a Mustang." He pulled out a pack of cheap dime store cigarettes and lit one. "The girls will be all over a nice guy like me driving one of those," he muttered to himself as he ground the butt between his teeth. A young boy who ran by chasing a ball was enough for the man to feel a quick flash of distaste. "Damn kids and the brats' welfare moms." He paused, feeling superior. Vincent considered going for a walk and changed direction. Slowly he strolled toward the big oak where he usually met his drug dealer every Saturday. He checked his watch and the pager on his belt. "Late again," Vincent grumbled. "I gotta get back to work, asshole." The pizza delivery man walked further out in the grassy field where a bright red flying disc with the word Frisbee in white lettering plopped at his feet and rolled. Grinning, he chased it down and picked it up. Instead of throwing it back to the kid who had overshot her mark with her throw, he took aim and threw it into a fir tree instead. It got stuck on a branch. "Sorry, kids," he grinned, pleased with himself. A small girl who looked to be no more than 3 tried to shake the tree's trunk and began to cry when the toy failed to come down. Ictathier watched the man interact with the other humans in petty cruelty. "Too easy." The daemon bared his teeth in version of a grin. "Think you are sadistic, human? Let me teach you what that means." He laughed. Another shadow, blacker than night, stalked along Ictathier's back trail. The drops of darkness where the other daemon had bled attracted the attention of a very specialized daemon, who was adept at tracking. Where Ictathyr was vaguely dog-like, the daemon was all cat in appearance. Tiamore was large and graceful. He was reminiscent of a panther in size and appearance, and his long fur was spiky and stiff. Unlike the spirit who previously came through this area, Tiamore blended and displayed no hurry. Ultimately, he had no use for other demoni, and no loyalty to his own kind. He hunted alone. Today, though, an Urgermach had demanded that he follow the wounded daemon. It suited Tiamore to see what was going on, so he agreed. Quietly, Tiamore followed the trail to the gate and beyond. When he emerged on the other side, it didn't take long for him to find Ictathyr. The wounded daemon was watching a human who provoked a crying child. Tiamore tasted taint in the air long before he came up beside Ictathyr, joining him under a large, rusty car.
Mine.
Ictathyr snarled aggressively. You can have him, Tiamore replied. His golden eyes were calm, and his long tail flipped casually.
The child is mine.
With their territory staked out, they both watched and waited. When the child ran crying partway back to her mother, who was distracted by her older sibling, she turned around and tried once more to dislodge her frisbee. The two demone saw that no one was watching her. Tiamore struck swiftly. He pounced, and the child tripped and fell. He held her down with his paw on her back and purred to her, pulling the kinetic energy of her emotional sorrow into himself.
Let go of your fear and your unhappiness, child. Give it to me.
The black cat projected his thoughts into her open mind. In her innocence, she responded with a giggle.
Go back to your mother, child. This is no place for you,
He told her, withdrew from her thoughts, and let her up. She turned around and saw him. "Kitty!" she exclaimed happily and clapped her hands. She completely forgot about her toy. In response, Tiamore sat down and pretended to wash his paw and ear like a normal cat. "Hey, kitty!" Tiamore was amused and wandered deliberately away. By the time the child brought her mother back to see the pretty kitty, Tiamore was gone. When Tiamore rejoined Ictathyr in the shadows of Vincent's car, he felt satisfied and well fed. Ictathyr, however, spat at him.
Shall I kill her for you so you can have a proper meal?
The Dromorsen laughed at him disrespectfully.
That was a pitiful display. Tears of sorrow. Pathetic.
Ictathyr snarled.
I don't know why the others tolerate you, mortal-born filth.
In response, Tiamore swiped dagger-like claws across Ictathyr's snout in warning.
My prey,
The cat hissed.
shall I kill you for your insolence? You are sloppy, wasteful, foolish. I have no need for your petty games.
He insulted the Dromorsen daemon. Ictathyr attempted to bite his opponent. Lightning fast, Tiamore calmly swiped his claws across the other side of the spirit's face.
I can do this all day,
Tiamore purred.
You, however, are running out of time and strength.
Ictathyr drew himself up with hackles raised to intimidate the other daemon. Tiamore stood and stalked closer until he was eye to eye with Ictathyr. There he stood, motionless but for the tip of his tail, and waited silently. Ictathier looked down and backed away a step.
Just wait. I will get you later,
He growled, trying to save face.
You are welcome to try.
Tiamori sat back down, unimpressed.
Besides, there's an Urgermark enforcer that will likely end you before you get the chance.
While the two demoni argued, crickets began to chirp in the gathering dusk. Most of the human families were leaving, except for some young adults lingering in the park. Few people were still around. Vincent had exchanged what little tip money he had for the expected drug delivery and neared the car with purposeful footsteps. Ictathier and Tiamori stilled and grew silent. The man hesitated and threw his cigarette down next to the car. Ictathier launched himself inside the open car door when Vincent wasn't looking. Satisfied, Ictathier noted that the interior was big enough for a body to fit. The daemon examined the man more closely. He was white-skinned, with a narrow face, mid-30s with greasy brown hair, and the beginning of a paunch. Ictathier could smell faint traces of beer on him and beneath the seats. Vincent's aura was simple to taste and smell. The spirit snaked his tongue out and read him. Hatred, sadism, greed, impatience, laziness, dishonesty. Did he have any redeeming qualities? Ictathier snaked his tongue out again. He loves his grandma, who raised him. She was in a nursing home, dying, and the man hadn't been to visit her. Another tasting. He also wanted a girlfriend, but wasn't willing to clean himself, had no ambition, and was an addict. Ictathier waited as he saw clearly the man's intent. The man was not a light worker, so this human posed no risk to him. Ictathier whispered to the man, purposeful but gentle with his suggestions. The man would think they were his own thoughts.
Go ahead, do it. You know you want it. You can call work and tell them your car broke down. It's only a tiny lie.
Fuck work, the pizza driver said explosively. I hate those assholes. People never give me enough tips, the stingy bastards.
Take the drugs and get high. Oh, look. What a beautiful young lady that is over there. Go talk to her.
Vincent popped a couple of pills in his mouth. He then opened a paper with a white powder and snorted it. A young lady passed by, walking toward the park entrance with a bicycle. The front tire had gone flat.
Take the screwdriver. Offer to help. She'll be impressed.
Ictathier needled the human. The drugs were taking effect already. It was getting easier to go deeper in his mind with the power of suggestion.
Might need a knife, too.
The daemon whispered when the man had the screwdriver. The man reached for a butterfly knife he kept in his glove box in response to the thought. He stopped to admire the deer antler handle.
There. Catch the pretty lady before she gets away.
The daemon snickered.
What a beautiful girlfriend she is.
Ictathier kept up the commentary as he crept along behind the man who hurried after the girl with the bike.
All for the taking.
Tiamori watched the following events unfold dispassionately. The result was a foregone conclusion the moment the drugs were in the man's system. Ictathier was going to eat well this day. Cat-like, Tiamori delicately sniffed the cigarette Vincent had discarded on the ground. He took the psychic scent of the man from the mostly burned roll of paper and tobacco. The spirit of sorrow turned away. He would be able to track the human later. Remorse was a powerful sorrow. Once Ictathier was done with him, it would be his own turn. Such a rich and vulnerable meal would never again know peace but through redemption or death. The small demone, who had little intelligence beyond the desire to feed, swarmed here. They favored human prey with a drug-induced lack of self-control. These Tiamori ignored and went about his own business, where he could no longer hear the screams. Tiamori was aware that it was almost unheard of for a daemon such as himself to have concern for humans. In truth, he didn't care what others thought of him. He slid carefully back through the gate where he could jump and make his report, thus discharging his job. It would be inconvenient to have an enforcer on his tail if he didn't make sure the fallen angel was informed. Vincent awoke disoriented in the pre-dawn hour. He slowly and stiffly sat up from where he was laid over on something cold and hard. His clothes felt sticky and damp. He felt disassociated from himself and emotionless. It was as if he distantly watched a movie that he was directing. The man groaned without recognizing where he was. He attempted to move, but his hand hit something soft and still. He pulled his hand back. What the? Am I dreaming? Oh, hell! He exclaimed. What happened? Vincent finally realized that he had been asleep on top of the girl who had twisted up like a broken doll. Her blood covered them both. She was stone cold and not moving or breathing. Oh, my God! The pizza delivery man began to scream and cry. No one heard him. He was alone on a Sunday morning. Hardly anyone was up and about their business yet. What do I do? Oh, God! What do I do? He sobbed hysterically. The cops! They'll be after me! He started to stumble to his feet, but tripped over the bicycle and fell. He grabbed the bike with bloody hands and leveraged himself to his feet, where he swayed weakly. Ictathir sat watching. The daemon laughed at Vincent contemptuously. Delicious blood and death had filled him as the sweet girl brutally died. She was too pure of spirit to be bitten by the likes of himself, but he could still use her to feed through the actions of a corrupted human. Deliciously cooperative, the taste of Vincent's sadism as he committed the murder had been wonderfully filling for the daemon. Only someone filled with that much rage over the feeling of denial for something owed could allow the severely wounded Ictathir any control. Ictathir hadn't even needed to suck the man dry. So much dark energy filled him that he began healing immediately. No more black blood dripped from his wounded arm and shoulder. Slowly, regeneration came from his shadowed core. Ictathir was ready to discard this particular human. Maybe he would come back later for another episode. He didn't really care. Ictathir turned his back, still laughing gleefully at the ruined lives behind him. It was time to chase the other teenage girl to redeem his pride and reputation. He could vaguely feel the wrongness that traveled with her and fixated on it. Darkness and speed was his ally. Ictathir ran swiftly and surely toward the spiritual taint which exposed the presence of the Spear of Chaos in the fabric of the mortal realm. Anyone who might have seen him in the darkness assumed he was a large dog running past and paid him no mind. May 11th, Lamone, Colorado. Hey, Brian, you got your ears on back there, bud? Kenneth carefully held the steering wheel of Diane's car with one hand and supported the CB mouthpiece with the other as he drove. Go ahead, Brian's voice crackled through the radio in reply. I'm powerful hungry. The Lamone exit is coming up. I'm going to pull off at the next convenience store with sandwiches. Diane says she'll buy us all a late lunch, and she's filthy enough to want a proper shower in bed. 10-4, sounds good to me, Brian answered and hung up the radio. Food and bath sound great. Mary Lou was awake and alert. I'm still stiff from sleeping on the ground in the car ride. A break should help. I think I'm ready for some coffee, Brian told her. You want some? Ew. Thanks, but no thanks unless you can find some that tastes as good as it smells fresh ground, Mary Lou replied, wrinkling her nose in distaste. I don't know about that, Brian replied. I have to be up sometimes all hours if we get an emergency call out on the ambulance or to go to work a fire. I'm not sure I could make it without the bean juice. He laughed. You're welcome to it, Mary Lou joked. I'll stick to the simple stuff. Brian considered what she'd said. Maybe some electrolytes would help if you're all that stiff. You want some Gatorade or something? Hey, that's not a bad idea, she nodded. I was thinking juice and some salty crackers, but that would hit the spot. Brian flicked his turn signal on and followed Kenneth off the road into a large parking lot. He saw that his friend had selected a convenience store that backed directly up to a field with many thick trees. This will work, Brian said enthusiastically and pulled into the shade. He parked the car close to the trees. Brian addressed the large wolf in the back seat. This looks like a good spot that you can get out to, Professor. We'll take care of you first. Then you can wait in the car for us and lay low while we get food and drinks. If you got this handled, Brian, I'm going to go on in and make a pit stop myself. Mary Lou broke into Brian's somewhat one-sided conversation. Yep, we're good. Ready, John? Brian took hold of the professor's leash just for show and walked briskly to get behind enough cover to hide them. Diane followed with the coyote. Kenneth found Mary Lou in the store browsing for her drink and snacks. They got a good selection of sub sandwiches, too, he told her, and pointed when she looked around, craning her neck to see where he meant. Ah, thanks. I wonder if they've got roast beef. She walked off. Bottom shelf, Kenneth called behind her. He adjusted his grip on the food he'd selected, and also grabbed chips and a chocolate candy bar. Diane and Brian came in the door just in time to witness an altercation at the checkout counter. A man and woman were being confronted. The man wore an unusually heavy brown coat over his dirty overalls. His clothing was out of place for the pleasant weather. Take it out. I can see you're hiding it under your clothes, the clerk demanded. Hey, I ain't doing nothing. I'm offering to pay, the man objected. The short, dark-haired woman with him kept looking toward the door. You've got a lot more than that in your jacket, the clerk replied angrily. You're stealing, and I'm tired of this shit. You're the third one this week. Give it back right now and get out of my store, she challenged. I don't have it. He shifted his weight from foot to foot and wouldn't look at the store employee. Liar! Put it down now, or I'm calling the cops. The clerk raised her voice and shouted. Kenneth deliberately handed Mary Lou his food. Brian, he gestured with his head to the couple at the counter. Brian immediately understood and handed his lunch to Diane. Here, hold these, he told her. They both walked up behind the shoplifters. Hey, need some help? Brian asked, bouncing on his toes. Kenneth grinned and blocked them from exiting. Not if they put back the stuff down and leave, the clerk told them. The man in the brown jacket looked around. Finally, he started pulling things out of his clothes. Bread, hot dogs, 2 drinks. There! And the rest of it! I can see it, the clerk said tightly. A pile quickly formed on the countertop as more followed the previous items. After candy bars, chips, and a bag of donuts, the clerk was satisfied. Now get out! Out! Don't let me catch you in here again, she told them. On the way out, the man dropped a package of condoms, but didn't stop to pick them up. He skirted out to a black Chevy truck with the woman right behind him. They jumped in and sped off. The clerk looked at Kenneth and Brian gratefully. Thank you, she said. I'll be right with you as soon as I get these out of the way. It's unbelievable how people just want to take shit for free. Makes everything more expensive for everyone. I know, right? Brian winked at the clerk, who raised an eyebrow. Her expression was still stormy. He continued unfazed. Can I have your phone number? You're really cute. Mary Lou rolled her eyes. She stepped forward, shaking her head before things went downhill from there. Hey, I'd be glad to put that stuff back on the shelf for you if you'd like. That way you can assist your other customers and they won't have to wait. Thank you. If you could do that, I'll go ahead and ring you guys up, the clerk told her gratefully. The woman determinedly ignored the guy who was gracelessly trying to flirt with her. You're welcome, Mary Lou told her. She picked up several items and carried them to their shelves. As they were leaving, Kenneth was a little behind the rest of the group. He walked over to Brian's car with a big grin on his face. He held up a torn receipt paper with hastily scrawled numbers. What's that? Brian asked him as he was getting into the car. Phone number? Kenneth laughed. He wadded it up and shoved it in his pants pocket. Still smiling, he went to Diane's car and got in the passenger seat. They pulled into a motel parking lot about a mile down the road and stopped again. Diane went inside and came back out several minutes later with 2 room keys. Tiamori slid back through the gateway opening and onto the moon paths. He immediately saw another daemon's severed head and splattered remains. A spike impaled the head. Flickers of silver fire still burned in patches, gradually evaporating the tainted blood into the ether of the moon paths. A powerful presence flared to his left, giving Tiamori only enough time for a flash of foreboding before he was hit. A sharp-edged bar of light whistled through the air and slammed into his head, snuffing out the vision in his left eye. Tiamori was knocked sprawling. He yowled in agony as the wound sizzled and spat from the radiant heat. An armored boot slammed down onto his throat, pinning him in place.
They are under my protection, Taman. You shall hunt them no longer.
A steely, feminine voice snarled in old Aramaic. Tiamori's one remaining good eye watered in the being's radiance. Crystalline armor sheathed her from shoulder to heel, shimmering in the light of the burning draconic wings behind her. Silver gray eyes caught between dragon and cat stared down at the pinned form of the daemon piteously. Tiamori desperately reached up and hooked black talons in the joining of the crystal plate and leather armor. His paws smoked and sizzled as he struggled to escape. The being shifted her armored boot just enough to allow her prey to speak.
I hunt but one great lady. I know not whom you refer to.
Tiamori replied formally in like tongue. The armored woman scoffed.
Demoni are very good at lying with the truth. Tell me, then, the name of the one you hunt. Ictathiam,
the trapped daemon choked out in the native language of the demoni.
Another daemon, then.
The lady furrowed her brows, puzzled, and then shrugged.
The politics of the demoni are of no interest to me. You trespass on sacred ground. The moon paths are reserved for the dead and the dreaming. You will die, as my duty demands.
Despair curled around Tiamori's core. The worst fear of any demon who dared traverse between worlds was realized. The lady raised her dual-pointed spear and struck down. Her aim was true. The spear point stabbed straight through his shoulder and into his very core. Just before it reached the center and immolated the very essence of his being, the spear point halted and withdrew. The pressure of the armored boot pulled back. Trembling, Tiamori barely had the strength to raise his head the few inches it took to look at his persecutor. She stood a few feet away. Her brightness dimmed as she folded her wings within her being. Her head tilted as she contemplated the downed form of her prey.
Not a demon after all, then. A fragment or forgotten sorrow. You are grief shed so the soul can begin again. I see you. All you have been, all you have done.
She folded her arms and shifted her weight to one hip.
But what do I do with you? Hmm.
She tilted her head back and shouted to the clouded sky above them. Habu! True terror pierced Tiamori's core, much as the spear point had. Father? Father who? Father the Creator or her father? Any father which gave to this creature's birth will be terrible indeed. In response, a second gate opened on the path. With a tearing slice, it appeared as if the ether in front of Tiamori twisted when it was pulled back like a curtain. The first thing the dark cat caught sight of was a golden staff topped with a giant pair of scales. Tiamori let out a squeal of terror as he recognized Anubis. Instantly, he realized who had caught him. Kibachet! He cursed in on himself, shaking. Why did she not kill me outright? Tiamori wondered in confusion. You called my daughter? Anubis asked. His voice was loud and echoed like thunder in this place. He nodded at the daemon, noticing the quivering black shadow form at his daughter's feet. I didn't think you would require my assistance with executions. Kivachet stood over the downed daemon, suddenly guarding and protecting the one she had tried to kill moments earlier. The trouble is, this one has done nothing worthy of execution, she told him. He has not killed an innocent. There is much harm that can be committed without killing, Anubis murmured thoughtfully. He waved his free hand over the dark creature. He also sensed what Kibachet had seen. Interesting and rare. A cast-off shadow of pain. Set would have interest in this, Anubis said softly. This is truth. Kibachet nodded. Thus I called you to weigh his heart. This can be done, Anubis agreed. Though Set carries the true heart, I shall weigh what remains against the feather of truth. Tiamori tried his best not to look. Instead, he kept his nose tucked under his tail. The scales creaked ominously close. He didn't move when he felt Anubis's touch, knowing it would do him no good to attempt to flee. Anubis took Tiamori's core by the simple expedient of closing his claw around it and lifting that part of the cat's essence free without killing him outright. The guardian was undecided how this would conclude, so he placed the dark core onto the scales. Surprised, Anubis saw the scales balance ever so slightly in the daemon's favor. Congratulations, spirit. You may live, Anubis pronounced. His fate is undecided. This will be reported to the Prime Creator in the Court of Heaven. Kibachet will finish with you, and I shall allow you passage henceforth. But know that you shall be watched. Anubis concluded ominously and stepped back through the gate to his temple. The aftermath of Anubis's departure felt anticlimactic, and the resulting silence was deafening. Tiamori uncurled. He was surprised to find himself intact, including the return of his sight. He blinked both eyes. Are they letting me go? Tiamori wondered. He looked Kibachet directly in the eyes. He realized the lady's gaze had shifted to green in color with her mood change. In contrast to their initial confrontation, she wore a pleasant expression. What are you going to do with your freedom? Kibachet asked. Tiamori thought briefly on his response, knowing he'd better be clear and truthful. I am to report Jibril's enforcer, an Urgermach-class daemon, the whereabouts and actions of Ichthir, he began. Despite telling Tiamori earlier that she wasn't interested in the politics of his kind, she realized she needed to know more. The Damon at the park, Kibichet said in a level tone.
Yes,
Tiamori confirmed.
I saw him earlier attack a group of people under my protection,
Kibichet revealed.
What do you know of this? I only know that Igdathir was assigned to procure an item in their possession,
Tiamori answered.
I only just caught up with him. More wasn't given to me to know, and I didn't care to ask.
Kibichet laughed.
It's typical of Demoni not to tell their underlings anything.
Tiamori didn't have a response to her statement. He just shrugged.
Fine. I will let you about your business, Tears of Sorrow. Call my name if you have need of me. But know this. I am not the only guardian of these paths. If you wish safe passage in this place, you will need to take my mark. Lady,
Tiamori began formally,
if my brethren see your mark upon me, they shall tear me to shreds and devour my remains.
He tried to refuse gracefully. Kibichet smiled at him gently, her green eyes shining with mischief.
Ah, it will take one with the Creator-given gift for discerning of spirits to see such a mark. Your brethren will be blind to it.
Tiamori considered her offer carefully. This ordeal had been terrifying enough to go through once. He had no wish for a second incident with another who might not be so understanding.
I accept,
Tiamori said. Echoes of a past he barely remembered in the mortal world pushed him to trust her. He rose and gracefully came to her hand, which he placed on the top of his head. Silver lines and tick marks appeared on the daemon's forehead, with a brilliance that lit up the space around them. Tiamori instinctively shrank away from the contact first, but soon realized the terrible light was not burning him. When Kibichet removed her hand, the light faded. Still visible to the discerning eye, there remained a circular cartouche with the Lady of Cooling Water's name etched inside it.
I have placed my name on you. Only one who is my personal agent would carry such a mark.
Kibichet crouched to eye level and held his gaze.
I warn you not to commit offense against the guiltless as your true nature dictates. I will know, she told him firmly. Because I let you live, I am also answerable for your future actions to the other powers of the Lesser Court. Do not try me.
She rose to her feet.
Now go make your report, Cat, and be careful. I have others to hunt.
Kibichet's sudden absence left Tiamori alone on the path, wondering if the mark on his face was truly invisible. Resolving to see for himself, he sought a reflective fountain or gazing pool along the moon path. In an out-of-the-way corner, the sound of water over rock drew the shadow figure aside. With creeping hesitance, he moved closer. He lapped the clear water, relieved at first that he could see no light reflected in the pool. Moments later, he realized that he could see the faint outline of a silver disk, with Assyrian writing shining in his midnight black fur. He briefly studied his reflection. Tiamori, just for a moment, regretted allowing Kibichet to place her mark upon him. Only one with discerning of spirits. Unable to change his mind or circumstances, he accepted his lot with a shrug. Tiamori leaped into action. Flowing along the moon paths, he sped to a jump point. Although he was viewed with distrust by watchers tasked with the safety of travelers, he went unhindered. There was no trace left behind when he jumped, which indicated that a shadow creature had lingered on sacred ground. Happily wrapped in a moist towel with her wet hair draped and combed down her back, Mary Lou relaxed on the edge of the bed at the motel. Diane had followed up on her promise to rent a couple of rooms. The guys were next door to them. Mary Lou presumed they were also resting and showering. She looked around for something to do in the crisp, clean room while Diane occupied the bathroom. Her eyes lit on the television and the remote control on the dresser in easy reach. Hmm, I wonder if there's anything good on the telly. Mary Lou retrieved the remote and poked its buttons until she got a response from the TV. She clicked through a couple of channels and landed on the Weather Channel. Looking at the weather map, she saw there wasn't much going on along their route to get home. Smooth sailing all the way. Supposedly, at least, she muttered to herself. Another click turned on the news. Oh my God, she said to the talking box in front of her. Why? Just why? Why what? Diane had finished her shower and came out of the bathroom in pajamas with a towel wrapped around her head. She paused to test the knob of a door between their room and the guy's room. With its overall occupancy nearly full to capacity, the motel's double suite was the only space available. Satisfied, Diane nodded when she found it locked. Patting the towel, she pulled it off and worked on drying her hair. She walked over to where she could see the television screen. They found some girl dead in a park in one of the towns near where we were up in Washington, Mary Lou said and pushed the remote until the volume increased. Listen, they got her family talking to the reporters. Have identified 15-year-old Lacey Skillen, found dead in Riverside Park by a woman walking her dog. Police sources say they are looking for a suspect driving a Ford Pinto station wagon. Witnesses recall last seeing her alive riding her bicycle and talking to a pizza delivery driver that they say frequents the area. We go live with her mother next, but first, a commercial break. Damn, Diane said and shook her head, looking at the smiling picture of the dead teenager from happier times. What a waste. Honestly, what is this world coming to when you can't even go to the park in peace these days? I don't know. We've had some close encounters ourselves, though, Mary Lou pointed out. Just lucky that's not one of us lying there with a police escort to the morgue. Diane pursed her lips sadly. I had to do that too many times when I was on the force. Lives snuffed out before their time over jealousy or stupid pride or greed. Precious babies lost through neglect. Women beaten to death by the men they thought would love and protect them. She shook her head. Brian could tell you some stories, too. He knows. We get way too many calls. It's a good day when we're bored, Diane concluded. She paused. All managed to get there in time to save somebody. Mary Lou sighed. Yeah, he told us. Diane went to the mirror, pulled the towel off her head, and grabbed a comb. See if there's something less morbid on. Turn on something sedate, like golf or bird watching or anything non-violent. I don't want to think about or see anything more strenuous. Mary Lou pointed the remote at the TV again to pull up the main menu. Okay, let's see. There's fishing, comedy reruns, a dog show, an ocean exploratory documentary, and history documentaries on Noah's Ark. It looks like they're claiming to have found it a couple of years ago. That'll do for some background noise, Diane said. She picked up a large container wrapped in plastic. I'm going to fetch some ice for the coolers. Do you want to come? I'll get my ice later. You go ahead. I'm going to watch TV for a while and maybe catch a nap, Mary Lou responded. The guys are next door. I should be fine. After Diane walked out with the coyote at her heels on his leash, it was quiet enough to hear the program. Mary Lou changed into blue jeans and a t-shirt, then folded herself cross-legged in the center of the bed. She watched the archaeologists explore the site of the Ark till the program concluded. Another show followed on the life and death of Jesus. The girl clicked through the stations again and put it back to where she had it. Deciding she was hungry, she fetched the rest of her lunch and sat at the table where she could see the TV. Mary Lou took a couple of bites and dropped her sandwich. She stared at the TV in stunned excitement. No. Could it possibly be that easy? She started to move and bumped the table. Oh, shit! An epitaph escaped her lips when her Gatorade wobbled precariously. She had to simultaneously grab the small round table and her drink to keep both from tipping over. She paused. The Spear of Destiny. That's a thing? Mary Lou said aloud to the empty room. Then she grabbed her room key and ran, nearly tripping on her shoes as she exited the room. She failed to notice that the door didn't shut behind her. Ken! Brian! She knocked on their motel room door, practically hopping up and down with excitement. The numbered, heavily wooden door opened to her second knock. Oh, hey, what's up? Brian asked her. He came through the door and closed it behind him, but not before she saw Kenneth on the phone. She furrowed her brow. Why did Brian just close the door like he's hiding something? She wondered bravely and shrugged. The Spear of Destiny. You ever heard of it? She asked him. It sounds familiar, but I can't say I have for sure, he told her. He waited for his friend to explain. Oh, okay. According to this program I'm watching on cable, it's the Roman spear used to pierce the side of Christ at the crucifixion. It has an actual name. Brian's expression brightened. Oh, yes. Now I remember. I knew it sounded familiar. I couldn't put my finger on it, he said. Do you remember anything else about it? She asked him. Is it a real thing for sure? I can't say I remember a lot about it. I remember from church and some of the Masonic teachings, but can't remember anything else about it. He gave her an intent look. I'm sorry I can't help. You're going somewhere with this, Brian stated. Yes. What they're saying is that people believe that if you carried it into battle, you can't lose. Like, ever. Maybe if we could find it, we could use it somehow, Mary Lou wondered. Maybe. If it's real, and if you could get your hands on it, he said. Is Ken? Mary Lou trailed off. Busy? Not too busy to run this by him. He might know something I don't. He's the walking encyclopedia. Let's go see what he says. Brian turned, opened the door, and left it open for Mary Lou to follow him inside their room. Where's Diane? Brian inquired. She went off to get ice for the coolers. She's not back yet, Mary Lou said. By herself? Brian looked concerned. Negative. Cowdy went with her. Mary Lou nodded at the open door. That's better than nothing, but not ideal, Kenneth said, while looking down at the table and writing on a paper. He looked up at her and gestured at the spear propped in the corner. That thing causes way too much trouble. By the way, if you girls hurry up in here a little bit, are hungry a little bit, we ordered pizza, Brian told Mary Lou. Her stomach turned thinking about the report of the girl murdered by the pizza man. Nah, I'm really not in the mood for pizza. My sandwich covered it for now, but I'll get something else later. I've still got a little money, so dinner isn't a problem. Food is not why I came to your room, though. Okay, hand? Kenneth gave her his full attention. I was just watching a program on TV, and they said something about an artifact called the Spear of Destiny. The spear the Roman commander Gaius Cassius Longus used to spear Jesus at the crucifixion, according to texts associated with Pilate, Kenneth nodded. I was thinking if it's a real thing, we could use it, Mary Lou told him. Yeah, probably, Kenneth agreed. Finding it would be like hunting a needle in a haystack. Nobody knows where it is. The spears that have surfaced have largely been debunked as fake replicas. Maybe School would have some knowledge of it, Mary Lou said hopefully. She might, if she'd be willing to tell us anything, Kenneth said, huffing a little. His expression was dubious. The immortals are not very forthcoming most days. It's worth a shot to ask her, Mary Lou insisted. Oh, well, we'll ask her. Just don't expect much, Kenneth agreed. Mary Lou thought about what he had said with her arms crossed. She leaned against the wall with her hand on the knob of the door between the two rooms. Mary Lou was surprised when it popped open. Oh, This unlocks on this side, she remarked and shrugged. Having this divider door might be useful. We could open this up between rooms without going outside. Might be safer. It might, Brian agreed. He plopped in a chair near the exit door of their room. I'm just glad to have a break from driving so I don't feel picky about the room one way or the other. That's for sure. Mary Lou started to step away from the door when the hinges squeaked behind her. Kenneth jumped to attention as the door slammed open with a thunderous crash against the wall. He wasn't able to reach her before a long, black, clawed arm extended through the door over Mary Lou's right shoulder. It hooked long, dagger-like talons under her collarbone from behind. "The Damon!" Brian rolled out of his chair across the floor and grabbed for the lowest drawer in the room's dresser. With a gun, he came to his feet and slammed a clip home at the ready. He watched grimly for a good target. Kenneth wasn't idle as he watched the inky black creature attempt to pull his friend back into itself with its jaws wide open to bite. Mary Lou squealed in pain and dug her heels into the floor to keep from being pulled backward. She saw Kenneth remove his leather belt and loop it in his hand, but he couldn't get to their opponent with Mary Lou blocking the doorway. She grabbed for the daemon's arm right above where it locked in her flesh and deliberately went to her right knee. Ictathyr's jaws snapped a hair's breadth above her head as she hurled him over her shoulder and onto the floor in front of her at Kenneth's feet. The daemon's claws scored bone as they came out of her flesh in a shower of gore. Mary Lou screamed in earnest as the muscles tore and her arm went dead. Ictathyr was injured again from the physical contact. His claws sizzled and her blood felt like acid on his skin. Kenneth came forward to curb stomp the daemon while it was on the floor. When the Tremorsan swatted at the teen, Kenneth was knocked off his own feet. Snarling savagely, Ictathyr leaped up and threw himself on top of the girl who was standing again. He intended to dispatch her quickly by simply snapping her neck before grabbing the spear and running. Instead, he looked directly into her face at close range and froze as he saw her eyes shift from blue-green to the icy blue of a stormy sea. To Ictathyr's spiritual sight, the girl's brightness increased and nearly blinding. The silver light around her terrified and fascinated him at the same time. He realized that killing her flesh would not make him safe from her wrath. It would only unsheathe the bright being underneath to finish him. With the two boys behind him, Ictathyr shoved the girl to the wall and wrapped his long claws around her neck to buy himself some time. He knew from experience the humans wouldn't act while he had the girl helpless. He grinned in sadistic glee.
Now you get to experience what it's like to have your arm ripped off, human queen,
he hissed into her face, grabbing her deadened arm by the wrist.
Get off me now!
Mary Lou gritted her teeth against the pain. Her gaze slid to the side where Kenneth came up behind the daemon with the belt. Let her go, Brian demanded. I will shoot you. Ictathyr laughed and half turned.
Your bullets don't work on me, human. By all means, fire your weapon.
Brian's eyes glittered with focus. Try me, bitch. I came prepared. I'm always prepared. These are dipped in holy water. A low, throaty growl emanated from the wolf standing beside Brian's leg. Mary Lou remembered their hike up the mountain. In the excitement, she had forgotten his presence. The professor. She struggled through the pain to do what she had to. In the moment the daemon was distracted, Mary Lou slid her one good arm behind her back and put her left hand in her right back pocket. She came up with a sandwich bag full of herbs, partly open. Ictathyr laughed in her face with the realization that she hadn't blasted him outright. He lost his fear of her.
You have no idea who you are or what you can do.
He shoved his face closer and pushed the point home.
Human spells don't work on me either, little girl. You're finished. There's nothing you can do to stop me from killing you now.
Ictathyr gloated. My spells don't have to work on you, asshole, she spat back at him defiantly. They just have to work. Raising her leg, she kicked him off her and threw the bag at him left-handed. Kenneth finally got the angle he needed to grab the daemon by the neck with the belt and yank him backward. Satisfied, Marilou saw the daemon swipe reflexively at the bag. The thin plastic gave way, and the bag exploded, spraying the herbs within all over Ictathyr as Kenneth dragged him to the floor. Have some flowers, Marilou said tightly. She slid down the wall as she felt a familiar weakness grip her. Before she lost consciousness from the pain and contact with the dark-born taint, she watched hell break loose on the daemon. It vainly tried to fight its way free of what now appeared to be a huge, hairy werewolf who grabbed hold of it in a vice grip with teeth and claws. Howling and fighting, the mighty strength of the wolf as it jumped up and down on him, clawing long gashes into him, Ictathyr finally broke free. A single shot rang out and grazed the demon's foot. He gave up and ran. Ictathyr howled in pain and rage as he was yet again forced to flee without the spear. A few blocks away, the daemon stopped in the shadows. He was limping badly. Part of his foot was blasted to shreds.
I will get what you have,
he hissed at them.
I'll be back, and the spear that you carry will be mine. It calls me. I hear it whispering.
I go down to get my pipe, and suddenly you guys got a commotion, Diane said, trying to slow her breath and calm herself. Sirens wailed down the street and got louder as they approached. Diane and Brian held pressure on Mary Lou's bleeding shoulder while they waited for the ambulance. Red and blue lights flashed a few yards away, lighting up Kenneth's face as he tried to explain the violent attack in their room to the authorities. Brian shook his head. That thing went for her again. This time the rest of us saw it. But we can talk about that later. I can hear the ambulance, Diane, and they aren't going to know what to do with that black dirt the demon leaves behind. They'll just stitch it all up and bandage it. So we better make sure this wound is clean before they get here. I'm on it, Diane told him with her mouth set in a firm line of determination. The bleeding is helping the cleansing of the wound quite a bit, but as fast as the last wound went necrotic when it was just a scratch, I'm going deep to make sure all the demon taint. Keep everybody off me while I work. Do what you got to do, Brian told her and looked down the street. I got this part. He got up and strolled off to meet the emergency responders. The ex-cop turned park ranger and shaman healer spread her chocolate brown hands out across the pale, freckled skin of the girl's chest and shoulder. She closed her eyes and hummed some low tones. Diane could feel the teen's flesh and bones under her hands, and winced at the damage. However, to her mind's eye, her concern was the familiar sickly green overlay of energy that she chased with her gifts and divine intervention. Finally, Diane sat back and allowed herself to be pulled to her feet by the EMTs. Getting out of their way, she moved aside to speak in soft undertones to the guys. Mary Lou will be okay, Diane said as she watched the professionals work on the girl. She's strong, and what I don't understand is why the demon keeps going for her specifically. It makes no sense. Ulfa is corralled in the artifact, and he shouldn't have any more of a grudge against her than us. That is a big $10 question, Brian agreed. She's getting the brunt of it now that Sierra's not here. More importantly, though, is if and when it will be back. This suggests that it's following us. Brian sighed. And the other question? What are we gonna do about it? Kenneth added. His amber brown eyes glittered black with suppressed rage. You're right, though, Diane. There doesn't seem any reason for it unless what Brian is saying is true, And what I already suspected, because of the spear's presence, we are being hunted. Like we talked about when we camped. Maybe it really does want the spear, and she's the distraction? Brian jammed his hands in his pockets and nodded his head, looking at the ground. Well, I'm going to assume that's the case, and I'll be ready for it. I have holy ammunition. Brian bared his teeth in a grim mockery of a smile. The EMTs put Mary Lou on a stretcher to take her to the nearby medical center. Brian walked over to talk with them and returned as they loaded her on the ambulance. They're taking her to the doctor to look at the wound and stitch it up. She should probably be fine to travel tomorrow if they let her out early enough, Brian told them. The motel manager found them when they were on their way back to their room. I'm really sorry, folks. I've got housekeeping cleaning your room, but it's going to take a while for that to get done. I can get you set up in a different room if you like. We had guests leave and create vacancies because of the disturbance. We are cleaning a couple of them. Great idea, Diane said with relief. Do you have any security camera footage of the personal thing that came into our room? She asked the manager. We do have some the cameras on. We can pull the images and give them to the police tomorrow morning. It will take that long to go through the films, he said. Do you have a better description than what the officer said you saw? Who are we looking for? Kenneth, always quick to think on his feet, answered. It looked like some wild beast, although it could have been somebody in disguise that wandered into our room. He or it tangled with our Alaskan Husky mix, who chased it off and protected us. Nice dogs, the manager nodded. My boy has 2 Huskies. Come by the office and you can see some pictures of them. Certainly, I'll do that. Kenneth reached out and shook the man's hand. Name's Ken. Josh, here. Excellent. We've got free coffee and donuts you can get, too. If you want, you can go ahead and move your things to the new room. I think the authorities have everything handled out here. I'll be in the office if you need anything. The manager handed 2 new room keys to Kenneth. He turned and headed away. Well, you heard the man. Let's get to our new digs. We need to be back on the road early as possible, so we better try to get some sleep rather than worry any more ifs, whens, or maybes, Diane suggested as she yawned. I'm for going to bed, locking the doors, and I'm not gonna move till morning. Late in the afternoon the next day, the bright sunshine had turned to partly cloudy and breezy conditions. The cars were on the road traveling east. Mary Lou was patched up again with her back propped against pillows. Between repeats of It's a Kind of Magic, Manic Monday, and True Colors, pop fashion music, the radio blared updated reports on the manhunt for what the media quickly dubbed the Pizza Killer. 2 more new bodies turned up, and Kenneth reached for the dial to click it off. Thank you, Mary Lou said. I've about heard enough. I just hope they catch him. He's being careless. They'll nab him, Kenneth said, and popped some gum in his mouth. There are too many dead bodies in quick succession. Somebody's bound to see something. He's sure got people running scared up in Washington State. I'd say we're lucky to be going the other way, but so far, that doesn't seem to be helping us. Mary Lou looked out the window and sighed. Nope, but you're missing something important. Kenneth glanced sideways at her from the driver's seat. You are alive. He emphasized the point by shaking a finger at her. You came a long way from the scared girl I met in school a couple of years ago and became a real fighter. That wasn't O'Brien and me back there at the hotel. You kicked ass, girl. That thing had every intention of killing you. You outfought it and outsmarted it. Just like in our fight with the undead monsters. You rose to the occasion when you had to. I'm still scared sometimes, she admitted. She got quiet when she thought about what he said. Maybe, Kenneth acknowledged. But you don't let that stop you, and you're real. It's called courage. He grinned with a mischievous gleam in his brown eyes. Even if you are scared of squishy marshmallows. Wait, What? Mary Lou's eyes grew big and she stared at him. You found the squishy thing? She slapped her forehead. Seriously? Technically, no, Kenneth laughed. Our coyote friend chased down your midnight nemesis and ate it. And no, I'm not going to ever let you live it down. Now I'm really embarrassed, she said, but laughed. Slowly the miles wore away under their tires. When they finally reached Kentucky, Mary Lou took the wheel. I'm familiar with the territory. My dad's from this state. I'm not too stove up to drive and Ken needs a break, she told them, and drove the rest of the way home. Seeing the downtown Rockwood mix of brick and old boarded up buildings was a welcome relief. At Professor Holderman's house, they set to unpacking, split up their gear, then returned to their respective homes. They decided that the Spear of Chaos would go home with Diane in the meantime. We will regroup later and figure this out, Diane told them. For now, go home and rest. Brian can come by and check on Coyote and me. We can help keep it under control, and it's still safer with me than at Carly's house. We can't afford mishaps. Deputy Brett Mulligan, a veteran of the United States military and longtime veteran of the Roane County Sheriff's Department, sat calmly behind the reception desk at the jail. He wasn't bothered by the demotion from patrol officer to desk jockey. Neither was he bothered by the sheriff's regular bouts of ranting. He maintained his professional demeanor on the job even when the sheriff occasionally pushed to try to find out more about what had happened the summer before. Deputy Mulligan kept his information and opinions firmly behind his teeth. No good will come of anything from that place, he told Sheriff Wilson. You have all the information you need. There's nobody to arrest or convict for anything. Deputy Diane Stanley already gave you a report. Gave me a bunch of bullshit, you mean? The sheriff scoffed. Deputy Mulligan just stared at him. You will either believe it or not. I can't help you with anything else, he told him serenely and shrugged. The sheriff's red face didn't move his veteran officer in the slightest. We shall see about that, Sheriff Wilson blustered. I've got connections. I've got my ways. So you've said, Deputy Mulligan responded and nodded. Feel free to use them. I'm just the receptionist these days, after all. The corner of his mouth twisted slightly in a half smile as the other man let out a throaty growl. The door to the sheriff's office slammed shut. Sheriff Wilson's heavy wooden chair creaked in protest when he plopped down behind his desk viewman. I'll show you, smart ass. He picked up the headset of the black rotary dial phone on his desk and dialed a private number. I need a warrant. You'll do that? Great, okay. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up the phone with satisfaction. Impeding an investigation, conspiracy, something will stick. He laughed. I'll get every one of you that was involved. In the open area in the next room, Deputy Mulligan didn't bother to let Sheriff Wilson know that the room's acoustics made it simple to hear what was said beyond the door. As the clock ticked to the end of his shift, he watched the sheriff leave and not return. When his shift relief arrived, Deputy Mulligan signed out and slid behind the wheel of his dark blue pickup truck. For a moment he paused with his key hovering over the ignition. Memories came flooding back into the deputy's mind. He shuddered while it played out for him again. The scent of rot and death filled his nose. He remembered the grabbing hands, and above all, an ancient evil so vile that a normal person would never imagine the horrors. He recalled his panicked reaction as he fired his service weapon with shame. It was a mistake that nearly killed the only non-human help they had received. He would have died if not for the intervention of the Coyote Pack and Diane's sheer unwavering bravery. Tears filled his blue eyes and came unbidden to his face. The only African-American cop on the force had more mettle than the rest of them combined. Then there was the lost children that Diane attempted to save. His knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel. We couldn't save those kids. Dear God, I hope you have gathered them all to you, so they are at peace. Thank you for giving us help and sparing our lives, he prayed. But why couldn't you spare the littlest ones instead of this old Marine? He sobbed, broken-hearted. Let me be the clay and you the potter so I can make a difference in this world. Help me so that it becomes a better place, Lord Jesus. Use me. Amen. His hand went to the silver cross and fish he wore hidden under his uniform. For a moment he fancied that an invisible hand laid itself on his shoulder in blessing and comfort. It gave him the strength to dry his eyes and start his truck. He headed out onto Race Street and then stopped at the White Store's grocer around the corner. He left with a steak in a brown paper bag a few minutes later. Mulligan drove toward Midtown, where he knew Diane lived alone with the coyote these days. He smiled, thinking about them. He hoped Diane would be home. After a short drive, Deputy Mulligan was rewarded by the sight of Diane's car. An old blue car he didn't recognize also sat parked in the driveway of her small house. His face brightened to see she was home. The door opened to his touch. "Oh, hey, Brett, I saw you coming." Diane welcomed him with a slight smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure of your company today?" "I thought I'd stop by and bring our little coyote a present," Deputy Mulligan responded. "Also to warn you that Wilson is on the warpath again." He handed her the paper bag with the steak. "Well, come on in. You don't have to stand there in the door like a big lug." She motioned him to enter. "Sheriff's on the warpath, huh? Why am I not surprised? When's he not on the warpath? Oh, hey, do you remember Professor John Holderman from the college?" Diane nodded at the middle-aged Native American man smoking a pipe with a heady, sweet floral scent at her kitchen table. The man's eyes were slightly glassy as he extended his hand for the deputy to shake. "How could I forget? It's a pleasure, sir." Deputy Mulligan responded and took his hand briefly. He sniffed. "Is that honeysuckle and tobacco? That smells amazing." "No, but you're close," Diane smiled. "It's a subspecies of fireweed, a rare special blend of flowers. It comes from the Pacific Northwest. We're holding the medical issue at bay." Diane laughed, but her expression was serious. "It's, shall we say, transformative in a good way. It only provides full effect by smoking it." Mulligan sniffed the air again. "It smells good enough to eat. Ha! It kind of smells like cinnamon and chocolate, too." Diane grinned. "Nah, you're smelling the cookies in the oven," she said. "Chocolate chip and snickerdoodles will be done soon. I'm making plenty. You can have some to take home with you." "You look a lot better than when I saw you last." The professor slid the pipe to the side of his mouth and spoke around it. Wisps of smoke rose around his face. "Tell me, are there any lasting effects from your injuries?" he asked the deputy, and looked him up and down. "Some stiffness in my left leg is about it. Overall, I'd say I got out unscathed compared to some of the others in that hell fight," Deputy Mulligan told him. "You have been blessed by the Great Spirit with life. Your work here is not done," the professor said. "That I have," the deputy agreed. He noted the neatness of the old Indian's clothing and the sleek, simple braid of his salt and pepper hair. He'd aged, Deputy Mulligan realized, but he still looked strong and none the worse for wear. "You look pretty good yourself, and I'm as gorgeous as always. One of these days, I might get a summer tan as dark as hers," he joked and put his arm around her. "Now, Brett Mulligan, you'd have to spend your whole summer in a tanning bed, and you'd still be red, not black. You a pale face." She poked his ribs, and he let go of her with an oof. "Probably true," the deputy acknowledged, grinning and rubbing his side. He grabbed a chair, turned it around backward, and sat down with his arms propped up. Deputy Mulligan's expression turned grim. He took a deep breath and sighed. In all seriousness, Diane, Wilson has something up his sleeve. Today I heard him calling in some favors and getting warrants. You know the judge will give him whatever he wants and not ask questions. He shook his head thoughtfully. He's like a dog with a bone refusing to bury it. Dan rolled her eyes at her guest. For what? When does Wilson investigate anything for real himself? He doesn't. Just sends his detectives out into the field unless there's something that makes him look good and will show up in Kingston's newspaper. We need somebody who would do better than that. Mulligan suddenly sat erect in the chair. When's the next election comes up, Diane? Why don't you run for sheriff? We need somebody with some integrity and talent at the helm. He looked at the professor, who was sitting silently, still smoking. The professor's eyes were half closed. Deputy Mulligan wasn't fooled. He knew his friend was watching and listening. Shoo! I don't think people are ready for a black woman as sheriff in this county, Diane responded, and I don't want it. I'm beginning to enjoy my freedom. Since I'm with Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency and the Park Service, I'm now technically state police. Still, what I have to concern myself with is simpler. A few fishing license violations, wildlife rehab, and presentations. Then there's patrolling the state park to keep an eye out for poachers or rednecks spotlighting deer. Life's better. Diane gestured at the deputy. There are other people with know-how and aesthetics on the full sides me, though. What about you? Why don't you run? You got the experience. I know I can do the job, Deputy Mulligan responded, but I don't want it either. Anybody honest will face the same mentality that took Sheriff Buford Puser out some few years back. It will take a while to clean up the bad element of the good old boy network, and I got kids. I'm not going to risk them in a local war. The professor spoke up. Your intentions are in the right place, but you shouldn't ask her to do something you aren't willing to tackle yourself. He pointed the mouthpiece of his pipe at the deputy. Leadership is something you both possess. You just have to decide where your priorities lie. Notice the same thing you're criticizing the current sheriff for is your excuse not to act. Yes? Maybe you are correct, but it does no good if you don't learn from it. He looked straight at Deputy Mulligan. Mulligan squirmed a little in his seat under the withering gaze. I see what you're saying. I will think about it. I heard Clower may run. I'd be running against him if I do. He was relieved when Professor Holderman nodded, satisfied. He looked at his watch, shook his wrist, and tapped the timepiece with a frown. I should probably go. My wife will have dinner on and be wondering when I'm going to come eat it, he said. Don't keep the lady waiting, the professor told him with a smile, and dismissed him with another wave of his pipe. Deputy Mulligan rose and stuck his hand out. It was good to see you again, John. I owe my life to you guys as well as God's providence. If you need anything, you name it. I'll be there. The professor took his hand firmly for a moment, sealing the offer. Deputy Brett Mulligan was shown out holding a bag of fresh cookies and sent on his way. He left satisfied that his message was received. Diane was no stranger to investigation or a stakeout. She noticed the unmarked navy blue SUV with tinted windows which seemed to always show up over the next several days. Diane shook her head and watched them watching her. Since Deputy Mulligan's warning, she remained alert, knowing that the situation would have to result in a confrontation eventually. After the fifth traffic stop over minor or made-up charges by local city and county police officers, Diane steeled herself and kept a tight grip on her steering wheel. Her jaw hurt from gritting her teeth in anger. The officer approached her car with his hand on his pistol. His uniform labeled him as Officer Bennett. Ma'am, do you know why I pulled you over? A slight smile turned his lips up as he attempted to look pleasant. No, Mark, I don't, she said tightly. I'm not doing anything wrong, and you are impeding my progress. So why don't you tell me what the problem is this time? We have worked together at county, so why don't you come straight up with it? Why the harassment? Is it some plan the sheriff has concocted to get even with me for quitting? Or is my crime now being the wrong skin color and driving through town? You have a headlight out, he grinned at her. I need to see your license and registration. Diane was shocked. What? It's a bright day, and there's no way you'd know if it work or not. Clearly I don't have my headlights on, as there is no need. Ma'am, your license and registration, please, the officer insisted with a deadpan tone. Of all the, Diane started. Fine. I'm going to reach in my console where my service weapon is and get my wallet, she told him. Do you have a carry permit for that weapon? The officer asked. If so, I need to see that too. Excuse me. Officer, do you not see this uniform and badge I'm wearing? Of course I have a permit. We've been out at the gun range together qualifying. Have you lost your marbles? Get out of your car, the officer told her. I'm fine right where I am. Now, are you going to write me a ticket or just keep on harassing me? Because if you are, I will call my boss up in Morgan County so he can find out why. In fact, I think I'll do that as soon as I get home. You know I'm from Morgan County. Up there, we don't allow your kind. You ain't nothing but trouble. Ah, thank you for answering my question. Finally. It's 'cause I'm driving black that you pulled me over. She reached into her console and pulled out her wallet to find a gun pointed in her face. She raised her hands to show she wasn't holding a weapon. Now get out of the car. The officer sneered. Diane started to comply and was gratified to see a state trooper vehicle pull in. Officer Bennett turned and saw the trooper's car. He blanched with a deer in the headlight look when he realized that the other responding officer was also black. He was well muscled, a head taller, and outweighed Bennett by about a fourth. I'm Trooper Collins. I saw you had this fine lady pulled over, and I thought you might need some help, he said. What's the problem? Me and Stanley here were just having a discussion, Officer Bennett said. There's not a problem. Well, since you got a gun in her face, I'd say then that's a problem. Officer, why did you pull her over? She has a headlight out, Officer Bennett said. What? The state trooper asked incredulously with a frown. She has a headlight out, Officer Bennett sneered as he repeated himself. I know what you said. She's driving legally. It's a bright, sunshiny day. Trooper Collins glared. Put your service weapon away and act like a professional, he told Officer Bennett. Miss, I know you're legal, but I'd like to know who you are. Would you kindly let me see your license? I'd be glad to, Diane said. I'm Diane Stanley with TWRA Wildlife Rehab and State Park Service. She handed him her license. I'm headed up there now. We have some school kids coming for a presentation on conservation. I've got some animals that I do live demonstrations with. Do you have them with you? He craned his neck to see inside the car. No, they are at the center in comfortable, familiar surroundings. I don't transport any wild animal just before they need to be on their best behavior. It's stressful for them to be moved, Diane answered. No snakes or small animals I can see, he laughed. I'm afraid of snakes ever since my brother put a bull snake in the bathtub with me when I was a kid, he said. None of those either, Diane smiled. Good, good. Would you mind, Miss Diane, to flip your headlights on real quick so I can examine their working status? Trooper Collins asked respectfully. Sure. She reached for her dashboard and flipped her lights on. Just as I thought, Trooper Collins said under his breath. They work just fine. Ma'am, here's your license back. You are free to go, he said loudly. Officer Bennett had gone to his patrol car and was pulling out. But just between you and me, I'm going to report this incident. We have a new boss and a new affirmative action plan in place. He leaned closer. What he just did will get him fired. Different jurisdiction, so I'm not clear on how that works. But if it did, maybe that will improve things a bit, she said. I ain't walking on eggshells every time I leave for work or go to the grocery store. We don't have to involve ourselves in local politics, he said. We just have to know who to drop the information to. Let me know if you have any more problems. This is my new territory assignment at the Department of Motor Vehicles, based out of Rockwood. It's temporary while they decide if they want to move it to a new location or build onto the existing building and add a Tennessee Highway Patrol office. That place? Nah, that building is way too small, and there's not any room to expand unless they buy up surrounding properties, tear it all down, and start new, Diane said. It's not big enough for a good drive and testing center, much less anything additional. I agree with you, he nodded, tapped her car door, and turned to go. I won't keep you any longer. I'll be seeing you around. You have a good afternoon, miss. Trooper Collins bade Diane farewell. Diane pulled away and onto the road with mixed feelings in her heart. Well, she was gratified by a fellow officer showing up and disrupting what she felt had been a potentially disastrous encounter. She was seething with disappointment and rage. Tears of anger soaked her face. Diane pounded her steering wheel. She found herself grateful that Crossville, as a metropolitan city, was more liberal than the rednecks close by across the county line. Officer Bennett had not been kidding. Morgan County was 100% white, and she had heard stories. They would let blacks move through and be gone, but nobody stayed after sundown if they had any sense. She shook her head sadly and pulled herself together when she got to the Wildlife Rehab Center. Diane decided to focus on the positive part of her day and leave anything else for later. If she walked in upset, it would affect her job. The dashboard lights illuminated Sheriff Wilson's face as his instructions crackled over the radio late in the evening. These were the casual-sounding ones. He had dealt with the important stuff earlier, and his expression was a mask of calm satisfaction. He waited at the boat ramp where the Clinch and Emery River meet across the Kingston steam plant for his special team. He didn't have to wait long after his arrival. Center's Ferry was closed for the day, so Sheriff Wilson felt gratified to note that nobody was around except for a couple of unmanned pickup trucks with boat trailers attached. He looked around the few minutes he waited for the others. Birds circled over the mostly placid lake. Dotting the surface, rings of ripples marked where bass chased bait fish. Pairs of ducks swam close to the shore, occasionally diving under the water for food. The green and white painted ferry with its 8-car pontoon barge was docked just around the curve of the shoreline. The ferry was quiet except for the sound of lapping water, where it bubbled in the shallow wake of passing boats. Sheriff Wilson regarded it with annoyance. It broke down so often it barely worked 3 or 4 days out of any given week. County maintenance would need to be called again, he noticed. The barge was listing to the side and taking on water where the pontoon dug the shore every time it stopped. The sheriff made a mental note to call for it to be fixed the following day. Quiet engine sounds pulled his attention back to matters at hand, so he dismissed the problem of the ferry. 3 unmarked black Mercedes with blacked-out tinted windows slid smoothly in beside him. This was the team nobody in Roane County wanted about. Too many officers in both city and county were honest, upstanding citizens and might report their activities to state or federal authorities. He pressed his lips together as Officer Mulligan's face showed up in his mind's eye. I'll deal with you later, he told the image. I should just fire you and chase you out of the county, he chuckled quietly. I need people that do what they're told. The sheriff rolled his windows down, waved his hand in a circular motion, and pointed. Let's go. Less than 10 minutes later, they had Diane's house surrounded.